The latest BioWare Anthem livestream just wrapped itself up, and we actually got a decent chunk of new information and gameplay with our first look at legendary contracts. Ben Irving was there. He piloted the Ranger with mouse and keyboard. He showcased a bunch of great PC sensitivity options as well as full key binding. So if you're interested on the mouse and keyboard side of things, you're going to have sensitivity sliders for just about everything you can think of, including separate ones for flying, shooting from a zoomed in non-zoom perspective, for swimming. You can even fine-tune those individual sensitivity sliders with additional sliders. So there's a lot of good options there for mouse and keyboard users. Now, he brought with him Emily Taylor, who is a designer developer over at BioWare, and she has been specifically working on agent quests that are a part of legendary contracts. And that is exactly what we got to see today. There's a bunch of other great stuff in this stream we're going to go over, including some enemy types, mechanics with certain enemies, weather effects, squad radar, lots of great little things I want to point out. But let's start at the beginning with just what a legendary contract is. Now, in this case, Anthem is a world with multiple factions. Factions like the Freelancers, led by Yarrow, and the Arcanists, led by Matthias. When you complete the main story for these characters, you'll unlock their legendary contracts. So in this case, the team is doing an Arcanist legendary contract for Matthias. These contracts differ from faction to faction because Matthias is not interested in the same things as Yarrow and vice versa. Matthias, in this case, is interested in Shaper relics, shutting them down and learning about them, studying them, and understanding how they produce the things they produce. So you're going to go out for him and across 3 stages, shut down Shaper relics, spawning random enemy encounters. Now, for this legendary contract, the group of 4 players were all level 30, but they weren't necessarily at like the gear score cap. So they'd been doing some endgame activities, but they didn't have like the best possible loot you could have in the game. And they were playing on hard difficulty. Again, legendary contracts take place across 3 stages. Each stage gets harder than the one before it. So you have your first stage, second stage gets harder, and the third and final stage gets a little bit harder than that on top of whatever difficulty you selected. So for their first one, they arrived at a Shaper relic and they begun collecting the shards that the relic has spit out. You'll actually have to collect all of the shards in order to shut down and close that relic, but in the meantime, it's going to start spawning bad things. In this case, it spawned a legendary Ursix with a decent chunk of health. Took them a while to whittle it down, but they were eventually able to close the relic and eliminate that Ursix. All of these things have a chance to start dropping pretty good loot. That's the point of a legendary contract, and we'll see at the end of all of this, Ben walked away with like 12 or so purple legendary drops, and even a masterwork drop for his Ranger's offensive ordnance launcher. Now, as they moved on to the second relic, they ran into Ash Brutes, which I don't think we've seen before. We've seen regular Brutes. Regular Brutes are essentially Frost Brutes, and they have like ice cannons on their back that they can use to fire at the player, kind of like the Storm's ice ability. Ash Brutes have no ranged weaponry. They seem like more natural. Perhaps they haven't been captured or enslaved by the Dominion, is my own personal theory. And they're very melee focused. So they just rush the player, they slash them, they're very aggressive. And it was cool to see a really aggressive like melee style mob for the first time. I don't think we've really seen much of that in Anthem per se. And these Ash Brutes were really making the player move around, get airborne, and have to really consider their positioning. So that was a nice layer of difficulty on top of hard mode in this particular contract. Moving on to the final relic, they dealt with quite a bit of bad stuff. So not only did they have to fight another Ursix at one point, because they actually restarted the quest after they ran into a bug, they eventually made it to the final stage and they ended up dealing with 3 lesser elite Ash Titans. So Ash Titans are, I think, what we know at this point currently as the biggest enemy in the game. So like a full-blown Ash Titan, not a lesser one, is way bigger than an Ursix. These lesser ones stand a little bit taller than an Ursix, and they shoot crazy energy laser beams out of their chest. We know these things, right? But this is the first time I've ever seen them engage Ash Titans that had like a full set of mechanics the player had to deal with. So outside of the laser beam chest thing, these Ash Titans can also fire out flame pulses. It's like a giant circular wave that comes out from where the Ash Titan is standing, and players have to dodge it. You either have to jump over it or get up in the air because it will actually do damage to you. It'll like stagger you and it'll set you on fire. And when you're on fire, you can't fly. So you either have to have a teammate remove that debuff from you or just wait until it dissipates on its own. It also is going to spawn elemental mobs to chase you down, and it was even doing like some airburst attack that the player had to dodge, which could also set them on fire, preventing them from flying. All in all, this is where this legendary contract kind of got out of hand, and it got really intense. There was a lot more focus from the team, and I think this was the perfect demonstration of like the ratio of difficulty to understanding of the game and how you can start to perform as a group playing the game together. In the case of Ben Irving and Emily Taylor and the other two members at BioWare, they're trying to do a live stream. They're trying to show off the game and interact with us and take questions. They're not worried about maximizing the cooldowns on their abilities or nailing combos all the time. So this fight took a decent amount of time, but it wasn't anything insane. I think we've definitely noticed at this point that Anthem doesn't have like crazy unnecessary bullet sponges. There are targets with decent HP, but it's only to extend the length of the fight, not to just make them useless sponges. And as a group of players who would go into a fight like this with a little bit more coordination, a little bit more communication, the ability to keep all of their abilities on cooldown so they're constantly use them, and then, you know, initiating combos with their abilities, combos with their ultimates, you could probably make this fight happen in half the time. And that's where I start to see a lot of the enjoyment in the core gameplay experience of Anthem. It's taking on fights like this that have these little layers of mechanics, and then really learning how to shred them with my team as I improve my builds with my different inscriptions and my different weapons, and as I just learn to work together with my javelin and my teammate's javelin and my other teammate's javelin, etc., etc. This is probably the most fun potential, I guess, I've seen, or the most fun I've had watching someone play Anthem at this point outside of like flying and the mobility mechanics. Like, this was a joy to watch. I was like, okay, this looks wicked cool. Like, if this is what I have to look forward to at endgame outside of Stronghold, I really like the idea of this. I like the element of random waves within the Shaper relics, and I'm even more curious to see what a legendary contract is going to look like for Yarrow or for the leader of the Sentinels. You know, what other variation will we have within these contracts? Time will tell on that one, but there's a bunch of other cool little details that I wanted to point out from the live stream. So we got to see the Elite Worker, which is a swarm enemy. It's like a crazy spider with an explosive sack on its butt. Every game needs to have a good crunchy explosive sack butt enemy, or just completely explosive sack enemy, like the, you know, like the good old popcorn fellas, the Flood from Halo. That's kind of what the Elite Worker is, except they totally blow up. So you can kite them into other workers, into other enemies, or you could shoot them to explode them when you want to. We also get to see weather effects in action. So not just rain, which cools down your thruster packs and allows you to fly a little bit farther, but lightning. So lightning can actually zap you out of the sky while you're flying. It can hit you and sort of temporarily incapacitate you in the middle of a fight. That's pretty cool. I'm not sure like just how gameplay intensive that's going to be, but I like that idea that the weather is a threat. This is kind of something they've talked about in the past, and I think a lot of us wanted to see. They didn't really have any final word on it, but today we got to see lightning, and we got the confirmation that it can zap you out of the sky. So hey, when you're flying in that big metal hulking javelin, you probably want to keep an eye out for thunderstorms and lightning storms. Definitely something to be worried about. And the last nice little touch that I saw in this live stream was Squad Radar. And I'd like to thank everybody who hung out with me in chat on stream today, because it was really fun. Everybody kind of pointing out things that they noticed as we're all watching the stream together. And Squad Radar was pointed out by several people in chat. It's a little radar indicator next to each player in your squad's name. So you can actually see where each individual person is with the little radar. It points the direction they're in, and the actual radar beam itself expands or shrinks depending on how close or how far away you are from them. So really nice touch on the HUD there. I appreciate things like that, especially in a larger open world where things can, you know, kind of start to get crazy when you're in a fight. You want things to keep your teammates in check and keep that ability to communicate and know where someone is when they go down, for example. That's always a huge problem in games. Teammates down, no one knows where the guy is. No one even knows he's down. Hopefully this will eliminate some of those issues. Now, there were some questions that we all had while watching this live stream. For example, we noticed that the Ranger has multiple segments in its health bar. And a few people pointed out in other videos we recently saw that other javelins had less segments or more segments. I don't know if that's just the way that health scales as you rank up. So you now start to have more health bars. I don't know, it's just a big unknown. You know, I'd like to make a theory based on what I've seen, but it's really hard to, you know, connect like the health bars I've seen to the level of the javelins I've seen or the pilots I've seen in the javelins I've seen, because none of that's ever made clear in like gameplay trailers and fancy trailers. So if you've got a theory on that, or if anybody has seen them talk about it and I've just missed it, feel free to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Of course, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about legendary contracts and everything else we just talked about today, everything else that happened on stream. Throw those thoughts right down below. I am still genuinely curious to see what else they could have to show when it comes to endgame. Even if it is something that isn't going to be there at launch, I think it would still be cool to know that we've got something dropping a month or 2 months after launch, and maybe the next episode of their sort of gameplay introduction from John Warner will reveal that. As he said, they are going to talk about the massive endgame, including strongholds. I imagine at this point also including legendary contracts, so we will see what else exists beyond that, if anything, that they're ready to talk about yet. They still haven't talked about Shaper Storms. Who knows? You know the gist. Let me know what you got to say down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to be awesome to one another, because at the end of the day, that's all you got.